Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Handmade by Ying with Donna. Today is July the 25th, 2022 on Monday, and my special guest tonight is none other than Sew Becca. Thank you, darling, for joining me. And I've been lucky enough to catch her as she's road tripping, and she's going to go ahead and break into that little segue so you know why she's not into her little space.
Because I'm driving Miss Daisy across the country.
Hi, Mama Nancy.
Hello.
Welcome
Mama Nancy.
everybody. And I interrupted her and I'm sorry.
And no, she does that to everybody else, so you are totally fine. I'm on a work trip right now, and at the end of my work trip is a annual retreat that my mom and I go to, and it's in the Alabama area. So I brought her with me on my work trip. So we're sitting in a hotel while I'm on a work trip, and at the end of the week I'll get to go do a quilting retreat.
How cool. Your calendar, you just book them all in, baby.
You got to get them back to back. It's either drive down here twice or drive down here once.
I'm with you. I'd have done it the same way. So let me get you started. And I appreciate you more than you know, hopping in and doing this with me while you're on the road. So just so everyone knows, this is a pre-record. Our times didn't line up, and Becca has graciously agreed to go ahead and hop on with me tonight, and I'm thankful and grateful and blessed. So with all that being said, everybody basically knows you, but for those on my channel that don't, I'm going to ask you, would you give me a little bit of history about yourself, like example, husband, child, pets, just a little bit of your background there.
Sure. My name is Becca. I was born and raised in Southeast Michigan in the suburbs of Detroit. And in 2005, I think it was, I moved to Virginia, which is where I met my husband. My husband and I live in Northern Virginia. We have one daughter together, and he has two children from a previous marriage. And I have a 9-to-5 that I love. I have a husband that I love. I have a church that I love. But most of all, I have a quilting community that I love. So I do a lot of quilting videos on YouTube. I have a passion for teaching and helping to encourage and inspire others to step outside of their comfort zone and try something new. And that's what my channel is all about.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough and found you, and I'm one of the ones out of my comfort doing.
Yeah.
You've taught me so much, and I'm grateful. What types of jobs have you done, like in your work history, that would feel that has contributed to making you the great teacher you are for all of us?
Actually, I don't think my 9-to-5 helps with the teaching at all. But what it does help me with is I do a lot of public speaking, and it's made me comfortable in front of an audience, which is translated to, over time, being a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera. Interestingly enough, though, you can actually ask Mom in the background. But when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher.
Oh.
And I would force my siblings to sit through school. My mom would buy a chalkboard, and I remember at one point we had one mounted in my bedroom, and I would force my brother and sisters to sit through classroom lessons where I was the teacher. I think there's even a very vivid memory of a rental home that we lived in when I was in 3rd grade, and they had just put up a new aluminum shed in the backyard. I don't know if it was them or the landlord or whatever, but I discovered these little white rocks that we had in our garden bed acted what I thought was like chalk. And so I took it on that gray shed, and I got really excited because I learned like any number times 1 is itself. So I was like writing out the arithmetic and teaching an invisible class, and my mom saw it, and I learned very quickly not to do that. But I've always had a passion for teaching other people. Whenever I learn something new, I get really excited about it, and I want to share that. And I leaned into that in college. My first year of college, my first 30 credit hours, I actually majored in elementary education. And I changed my major when I had to go sit and audit a kindergarten classroom. And I saw a room full of crazy 5- and 6-year-olds, and I went, nope.
This isn't for me.
Nope, not for me. So I do have a little bit of background in education, only because I took some classes in school and college, and I have a passion for it, and I've just kind of figured out what works for me, and I lean into that.
And I'm saying it for myself, but I'm speaking for others that I hear in the quilting community. We all like your teaching style. You break it
Oh,
down, not that you're dumbing it down, but you're breaking it down step by step. It's not a speed video to where we can't follow you. And if it goes too fast, we've always got the pause.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I struggle so much with that, Donna, because when you're making a video, if you're trying to do a sew along or a tutorial or something, I want to have the right balance of keeping it moving, right? I want to keep it fast paced enough that I'm not losing your interest, but I don't want to go so fast that you can't sew along with me.
mhm.
I've been there, I've done that. I've had those sew along videos where you have to pause it. Like you're constantly like, okay, let me sew this thing. Oh, no, let me pause. And you kind of stop and then rewind because they're going way
Right.
too fast. So it's a balance. It's a balance. And I still don't, I don't know that I'll ever get it perfect for everybody, but I think I have it okay.
You
So we'll see.
do. If this was wound back like 2 years ago, I couldn't follow because back then I was always the pause.
Hmm.
Now, I guess it's just that whatever level you become, your
Yeah.
comfort level, even with your equipment, you know what I'm saying? It makes it so
Mhm.
much easier. And you just break it down step by step. And it's like, do this, flip this, sew this, snip here. And you walk us through and you make it easy to follow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of positive feedback, but you're great at what you're doing.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
what is the favorite? Do you have a favorite part of quilting? Like, is it the
Oh.
sandwiching? Is it the watching it all come together? Is it the design? Is it the fabric?
It depends on the day of the week. So my brain tends to go in a million different directions all at once. And I have a hard time focusing in on what I need to be doing. And I think that's actually part of the therapy that quilting provides to my life is it helps slow my brain down. It helps slow the thoughts, right? So I guess it just depends. I get into the zone with piecing. I like piecing, but I don't like it when a task becomes mundane and very repetitive. And I quickly want to find a different way to do it.
Mm.
Same thing with quilting, long arm quilting. I love free motion quilting, but I find that if I'm doing the same motion over and over and over again, the repetitiveness starts to bore me. So that's probably a little bit more about what my least favorites are. I really just like the whole creative process. It depends on what I'm feeling inspired by in that moment. Sometimes I might feel really excited to draw out a quilt design and make something look pretty. Sometimes I might feel really excited to do a video tutorial on a very basic thing. Sometimes I might feel creative by doing long arm quilting or just having a personal sew. I have learned we do not call those selfish sews because that has a negative connotation. So I call them personal sews because it's time for just me to create without having to teach anybody else or put anything on video. And as a content creator, now that you're stepping into this world of YouTube, I am sure you know exactly what that means. No,
And
no,
I honestly have gotten to the point to
no,
where
no.
we have our set schedule. We know what I'm doing each day of the week, and if it's a project that I want to share. Otherwise, I really, my sister, she's bedbound, but she calls it my mindless sewing. It's projects that I like that calm my mind, calm my spirit, and I can
Mhm.
just do what I want to do, not be stressing. Am I doing this right? So I like your
Yep,
terminology as
absolutely.
well, because my mind's always been this way my whole life. It's like it's shooting and firing many different directions at once, and I feel scattered. I've got to do this, got to do this.
Yep.
And it's like a squirrel. I see something, I want to do it. You know what I'm saying? So it's slowing me
Mhm.
down in that aspect because we've learned I take my Wednesdays, that's my me day, you know? Call it selfish or
Yes.
whatever, but I need that one day a week that we're not running the business, we're not doing the YouTube. I just unplug, decompress, and do what I want to do.
Well, if you think about it, any 9 to 5 job that you have, most of them are going to give you at least 1 or 2 days off a week. And if you have a good job, you've got a good work life balance. But
Hmm.
when you become an entrepreneur, whether you're running a quilt shop or you're running long arming services or you're running a content channel on social media, it can become extremely overwhelming, especially if that business is centered around a creative outlet that you really enjoy.
Mhm.
That line between personal and business can become really blurred. And before you know it, everything you're doing is for the business, right? And so
Yeah,
now you don't have any time to get back to your love, your passion. So it's really important to set that time aside.
that's what we've learned the last couple weeks, that I need to go back to the basics of my time, because
Yeah.
I was honestly burning out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
And
sure.
you know what it's like. You just,
Yeah.
we're working our side hustle. We're doing this. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is, and you learn.
You'll get there.
Absolutely. Um, would you walk me through just the thought process, kind of like how do you pick a pattern? Do you favor the pattern first, the fabric, then pick the pattern? How do you normally, in Becca's world of a normal, I want to make a quilt. Do you pick your pattern? Do you pick your fabric and then think of your pattern? Do you go to, what is it? EQA? Am I saying that right? You know, or
You
do you
are,
pick,
but that's not what I use.
right? I just use, honestly, I use a piece
Paper
of
and pen.
paper with lines, and I make my lines, and that's the way I
Yep.
design my quilts when I'm doing my own, because
Yep.
I just can't wrap my head around the other. I use my
Yep.
coloring pencils and fill in what I want.
Yep. So there's a couple of different projects that I'll lean towards. The ones are there are those that I curate myself, and I think that's where your question is geared. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But then there's another section of projects that I'll create, and those are the easy sews. They're the quick wins. They're the kits. And that's part of the reason why I love those subscription boxes so much, because they tend to offer me, at least the ones that I try to subscribe to, they tend to offer me a pattern and at least some or all of the fabric for that project. And so if I want to make that, all I got to do is pull the kit and I can just put that together. It does mean that I'm kind of taken out of the design or the creative process of figuring out what that looks like, but it adds either fabric to my stash or a pattern to my pattern collection if I don't want to do it. So I really like subscription boxes because it takes the thought out of it and allows me just to sit down and get started. I can just start working on the tasks.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the other section, the stuff where I'm trying to figure it out or I'm trying to put together, I think it just depends. I love to go shopping in I love to go shopping for fabric, as I'm sure we all do, but sometimes a pattern will stick out, just jump out at you. Sometimes a whole kit will jump out at you, and sometimes fabric just yells at you that it needs to be bought. So I don't know that I always buy one first or create one first over the other. It's not always a cut and dry pattern first, then fabric, or fabric first, then pattern. It's what inspires me to want to do something. And I take it from there, right? I will say I feel like I tend to lean more towards, maybe not, but I was going to say I feel like I lean more towards putting more time into curating fabric bundles than I do a pattern, because I feel like if I buy a yard of a fabric, or definitely 2 yards of fabric of just about any print, and I buy a yard or two of a few coordinates, I can make just about anything with that bundle, especially if I toss in some solid background or something. So um, if I don't know what I'm going to do with it, I might just buy 3 or 4 coordinating prints, maybe 1 to 2 yards of each. And I know if I add some coordinating background or complementary background, it should be a pretty good project.
Do you have a special fabric designer that you favor one over
Mm-hmm.
the other?
So there are a few designers that I really like, but above and beyond anything, I am drawn to batik fabrics. I love the motion and all of the texture that the prints give to you, even when they create solids. I feel like there's a lot going on there, and I really am inspired by how unique every single cut off that bolt is. because it's all hand dyed and it's not screen printed. So the first yard on a bolt is going to be entirely different than the last yard on the bolt, and it just adds a lot of movement to your quilts. I'm not a big fan of solids, so I like to have a little bit of texture, a little bit of something going on, even if it's light. I'd like to have something going on, otherwise I feel like it's boring.
Absolute.
So, but I do like, there are a couple of designers that I like. I think Lala Boutique has only ever had one line that I just did not love, and that was her Smoke and Rust line. Everything else, I've either been like, okay, it's pretty good, or I have been drooling over it. I really like Sweetwater's fabric too. I think Corey Yoder, Bonnie and Camille, I think those are probably my top. Oh, Kate Spain's also amazing, but
Yeah,
she's also been dabbling in batiks too. Kate Spain designs for Moda. She's done a couple of screen printed lines, but lately she's done a couple of batik lines that are just absolutely amazing. So that's kind of crossed into the world of batiks and kind of pushed her up there above Lala. I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong.
It's okay. I'll Google her and find out a little bit. Anytime I've used batiks, I was always struggling with knowing which side was up, and other ones are like, oh, you don't have to worry about it. You can just sew it in. I watched a video on the process of it, and I learned real quick that there is a right side and a wrong side.
Yes.
And I was like, poof, it was like someone turned the light on, because I would lay it down and I would struggle and I'd hold it up to the light. And I honestly got aggravated because I had some and I was like, I can't use it because I don't want to use it wrong,
Yeah.
And another content creator was like, just sew it in. No one's going to know the difference.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Right. And I understand that. But once I watched a tutorial on the making of it, and there is a right side and a wrong side. Do you want to tell the viewers how to tell? I was like, poof.
So here's my disclaimer. There is a right side to batiks, and I'll talk about why that is in just a moment. But I will say, don't stress about it. Like, honestly, just sew it in. What happens is, in the process of making batik, everything is hand dyed. Think of it kind of like tie dye. So they take this yardage. It's actually a different type of fabric. It's not the same fabric that they roll on a machine that actually screen prints it. It's got a tighter weave to it. It has a different texture, but they dye it, and then repetitively throughout the process, they apply little pockets of dye on it. But after the first initial dye, to get your solid base color, they take it into this stamping process where they take a designed element, right? Now their basics lines where you just have like the solids, they don't do this, but anytime you see a print, they take this stamp and they dip it in hot wax and they apply that hot wax to the fabric, and that hot wax protects the first layer of color that you had on the fabric, and then they put it through a process to remove the dye throughout it, but the wax that was on that base color keeps it from going away. So once they take the wax off and they start applying different layers, everything's good. Where things come into play is that wax is really only put on the right side, right? So the color has always seeped through to the bottom, but it doesn't always protect the color on the bottom. And so what you'll end up with, you'll see the print on both sides. You'll see all the colors on both sides, but there will be one side that is just slightly, ever so slightly, a little bit more vibrant, and the color images are just like the edges are just a little bit sharper. And if you don't know what to look for and you don't have another piece of fabric to line it up against, you're never going to notice. And even if you hold them next to each other, you still may never notice. And so for that reason, while there is truly a right side up for batiks, you don't need to stress about it unless you're working with a batik where they did some after effect like metallic or sparkles or something. I would tell you not to stress about it. If that's going to prevent you from working with batiks, then let go of that and just work with the batiks. And I promise you it'll be gorgeous in the end.
I'll tell you the little cheat that I learned. And I was just, once I pulled mine because, you got to check it to make sure that the person's telling you the truth. You take and hold it up, and if you pull a little bit of pressure on it, The side that is your right side up will lean forward or backwards.
Oh, but that's
I've
only
never
if you
had a
did not.
clue.
But that's only if you haven't washed it, right? Once you
Yeah,
wash
this
it,
is
if
when you
you wash
bring
it.
it home from the
Yep.
store, and the tutorials that I've watched on it says they recommend you do not wash it, and
Oh no.
definitely never use a color catcher. So I'm learning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I've actually never heard that tip, so I'll have to check that out.
you
That's
have to
interesting.
try it. That was a no-brainer. Now I'm back to loving my batiks because I'll sit as I'm stacking them and I'll just do this, and it's so far on point, and now it's blending perfect. I never
Nice.
knew, and I was just like, now I like to do it again. So that's just something I learned from one of the tutorials, and I was like, it really worked.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, the next thing is, you're gonna like this. Where
Mhm.
did you get the name for your channel? Other than you like to sew and the name back of people want to know where the name came from.
Okay, so first of all, in my job, I do a lot of speaking in front of audiences, and one of I'll just say this, although it has nothing to do with the channel name, but it does. It is funny that it worked out this way. When you start to say something and you're trying to gather your thoughts and get your words together, I'm not the only one that does it, but a lot of people tend to go, so, and then they'll go on with their thought. And I didn't even realize that I did that all the time, but I do. So that, see, I just did it. So that's funny. Um, Great. Now I've just pointed that out, and everybody's gonna be like, oh, now I
I
hear you
think we
say
all
so all the
do.
time. So and I feel like I say those all the time. No, the channel name actually, I originally had like I originally in the very beginning had it just my first and last name, and I really just didn't want my channel to have my first and last name out there. And now sometimes I wonder if maybe that was the right way to go, but I wanted to have something that kind of spoke to sewing and quilting and things with like needlecraft, because that's what I felt like I was going to be doing the most of. And I thought it was a really cool play on words to do like Sew Becca. And immediately when I did that, what popped in my head was that Disney show that was like so whatever. There was some Disney show, I can't remember what. So Raven, that's So
Yeah.
Raven. So I was like, oh, that's So Raven. So Becca. Now here's a funny story for you. I have had a couple of online gaming areas, not like World of Warcraft or anything. I'm talking like a virtual reality, like a poker room, not even playing real poker, just like imaginary money, everything. When my daughter got her VR headset, I was poking around in there and I made my ID Sew Becca, SEWBECCA. And I can't tell you how many people came in and went, Sue Becca? I'm like, dude, can you not spell? Like SEW, so. Like, that's not Sue. But it was kind of funny because I remember a couple of times folks were like, oh, Sue Becca, is that like Chewbacca from Star Wars? And I was like, you don't even realize this, but like I have Chewbacca as an alias for some things too. So
That is
it's just kind of
funny.
funny. Yeah.
That's kind of like, there you go.
Yeah. But our kids growing up don't know how to spell anymore, or they just don't know what sewing is, apparently.
Their life is about this.
Oh, it's a lost art.
I can't remember the last time we could sit down to a table and have a meal without someone, not just the little ones,
Ah,
coming. So we bought this tray that says all electronics go here at mealtime.
yep,
I like that communication. I don't want to
yep.
see someone.
We did that when we moved into our new home. There were a few rules that we put in place, and one of them is no devices at the table. So if I have to bring my device to the table for work, I always place it face down so it's not distracting. But that way, if there's an audible alert and I need to get on something, I can. But there's no electronics at the table, and we eat at the table every single night because it's practically the only time that we really get a good conversation going with us. So yeah, I hear you. That tray's a great
Absolutely.
idea.
I think that's a lost thing. I really
Yep.
do.
Yep.
Um, what type of sewing machines do you have had, and do you have a favorite and why?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Okay. All right. So I've had a few machines in my past, and it all started with a brother that I got at Costco. When I started sewing, a friend of mine taught her group of friends how to sew on a Friday night group that she called a sip and sew event. So you basically brought your beverage of choice, you came to her home, and she would teach you a very simple project. The first sip and sew I went to, it got me hooked. And the next day I went to Costco and I picked up the Costco special. That's what I called it. It was the brother quilting machine that they had for like 150 or 200 bucks. I forced myself to sew on that machine for a year before I allowed myself to upgrade, basically. And when I did, I got really lucky. My friend who had the sip and sews had recently bought a baby lock machine, and I was in love with how smooth that machine sounded, and I wanted one. So I called the baby lock dealer that she got it from, and he said, well, I happen to have one. The lady that had owned it had just upgraded to a baby lock Destiny from the machine that she traded in, which was a baby lock Elegante, and it's a sewing and embroidery combination unit. She had never used any of the embroidery stuff, and spoiler alert, neither did I, but she never used any of the embroidery stuff, but she had all of it. It was like new, and I sewed on that for a while. I have passed that machine on to my friend that got me into sewing. She has it now, her daughter's using it, so it's still being used. I upgraded from the Elegante to the Baby Lock Aria a couple of years ago, and honestly, I upgraded because I thought the machine stitched faster than the Elegante. Spoiler alert, it does not. They do the same stitches per minute. I bought the wrong baby lock machine. However, that Aria is an amazing machine, and I absolutely love it. In December of 2021, this past December, the guys over at So Yeah Quilting sent me a Juki TL 2010Q. I had been eyeballing a machine that did more stitches per minute because I wanted to go faster, and I had been thinking about a straight stitch machine. And I knew at some point I was going to have to get a second machine for home because I paid my Elegante forward to my friend. I didn't really have one. And mom likes to sew and quilt occasionally when she comes up, but she needs one that does all of the things, right? She needs it to thread the needle for her. She needs it to do that. She needs all of the extra features. So I could have either bought another high-end computerized machine, which was a lot of money, or I could just get one that just does a straight stitch really well and really fast, which is all I need. I'm never going to quilt on my machine because I've got a long arm. And if I ever want a zigzag or a decorative stitch or any of those other assistant features, I still have the baby lock. Mom doesn't sew every day. So it just felt like the most economic machine that I could get into that gave me everything I needed was a straight stitch machine. I was considering the Juki. I also considered the Janome, and I considered the baby lock version and the brother version, which are essentially the same machine. All four of those machines are high speed machines that do between 15 and 18, 1600 stitches per minute. I ended up going with the Juki because So Yeah sent me a Juki, but I'll be honest with you, I love the way the Juki looks. It just kind of looks like one of those old school muscle cars, like an old Thunderbird with the way the nose is rounded. It
See,
just, I think it's sharp.
yours and Tiffany's are about the same. I just love them. Like you pour the oil in, kind of like a car,
Yep.
where we
Yep.
don't have to break it down like this.
Yep. I do have two more machines. The question was, how many machines have you owned, whatever.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I do have a 1934 Singer hand crank that runs with no electricity because it's a hand crank. She sits on the shelf behind me in all of my videos. I call her Nancy Jean because she's short and squatty.
I was going to say, Nancy, I remembered you named it after your mama.
And this weekend, I will be adopting a new, to me, 1948 Singer featherweight. Yeah.
Oh,
And
my word.
I've already called her Peggy Sue. My friend found one and picked her up about a year ago and kept her, and then decided, I'm never going to sew on her. So, Becca, would you like her? And I said, duh.
Before it's out of her mouth, do you? Yeah.
Yeah, she was like, I bought a featherweight, and I was already screaming, yes, 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 yes. So I have decided, as long as everything goes well, this weekend I'll be getting the crash course on how to provide maintenance for the featherweight, doing the oiling, the grease, and the cleaning, and all that other stuff. I do have a machine guy that I trust explicitly with all of my machines, so he'll be my go-to. But this weekend, I will officially adopt her, and she will become my travel machine. So anytime I go somewhere, I'm going to take the featherweight.
What type of a long arm machine did you end up buying? And do you do custom work on it? And has it been worth the investment to upgrade from what you had?
Okay, so my long arm story, Donna, you are intimately a part of because you helped make my long arm story a reality. Before I had my long arm, and I'll talk about what that is in a minute, I had a Baby Lock Tiara 3, which I loved for about the 5 minutes that I used it. When I bought the mid arm, I was in sticker shock over the price of a long arm. So I settled for the mid arm. And I convinced myself that would be all I would need, and I would force myself to use it. And the reality is, it didn't do what I needed it to do. You asked earlier what my favorite parts of quilting were. One of my least favorite areas of quilting is basting. I hate basting a quilt. The bigger it is, the less I want to do it. And with the mid arm, you still have to baste that sucker. Yep. And then, as you well know, you still have to wrangle that quilt top underneath the needle. It's not the motion of doing this that I don't like, because I can move the fabric under the needle. It's the motion of doing that for about this amount of space and then readjusting the quilt every time you want to move just a few inches. Mm-hmm. So I kind of outgrew that really quick, and it sat and collected dust in my basement. And every so often I would turn it on, oil it up, clean it up really good, and do some more stitching on it. I paid that forward to you. You bought that from me.
Yes, ma'am.
And I knew, yes, you did. And you were off and running on that no time. When I upgraded from the Baby Lock, I went to a Handy Quilter Amara, which is a long arm machine with a 20-inch throat, and I put it on a 10-foot frame. I have not outgrown that. I don't think I ever will outgrow it, and I absolutely love it. You asked me if I do custom work, and the answer is no. I do not take any commissions for my long arm services because the reality is I just don't have time. For every moment that I would spend doing the commission work, that would be another moment that I wouldn't be able to do the things that I am offering on my YouTube channel. And I really, really want to be able to focus on the social media content creation rather than long arming quilting services. Maybe that'll change for me down the road, but right now I don't really have an interest in doing that. I will say the way my brain works, I'm a people pleaser. And I would stress so much over making sure that I'm doing right by the client when I get their quilt. I would worry about the design choice, whether I quilted it properly, the thread choice, all of that stuff. And it would take the joy out of quilting for me. So I much prefer to do the quilting just because I wanted to do something and then pay that quilt for it, either sell it or give it away or keep it for myself. But I just, I need this to be a creative outlet.
But I know when we bought the mid arm from you, you were gracious. You brought it up. You set it up. You showed me how to use it. You were right, off and running. I never missed a step with it. And that day when you set it up, you saw the space I had.
Yeah.
You're like, I hope you don't outgrow it. Well, I have no room to outgrow. Little did I know, I still hated basting. Still hated taking down the dining room table so I could have the hardwood floor to crawl on like a puppy, taping it with the painter's tape. And then he really hated putting the table back up. So the guy will give me whatever I need or whatever we want. But after I did I call it the fair quilt. It was the Dear Jean quilt.
Yeah.
That was 108 inches one way, 102 the other. That one took me a better part of a month to do.
Wow.
And It was like this, and I was even trying to figure out new ways of rolling it and folding it. We had no desire by any means to go buying a long arm. So I went out. Um, the quilts I had entered, the first one was the as luck would have it, nothing. I'm still walking through touring it. Got to the one that I did with you, the fallen triangles, nothing. Just people like looks great or something like that, but no. So I was like, I know I entered 3, you know what I mean? And I had planned on entering 4 because I had gotten one pattern off Tiffany following her along where it was freaking beautiful. There's no other way of putting it. I had the doves in the center and I had them stuffed. That quilt, there's no doubt. If the Dear Jean one, I guarantee you this one would have. I'll have to take a picture and send it. But like she etched it in where she just freely did it. I took the time under all 52 of them and
Wow.
stuffed them and then went around it on the tiara.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll take a picture and show it. My granddaughter, first night I had it laying on the bed, just making sure everything looks symmetrical. She comes in and she's always welcome in our bedroom because that's where the TV is. If kids can go in there and lay down, I forgot that was on the bed. Her mom gave her Dorito potato chips. She wiped her hands like this and all that cheese went all over it. Ruined the quilt. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, the poor kid. And also poor Donna. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
So I put it in a dry cleaners, told them what it was. Please don't put a lot of chemicals on it. I just, that one block, if I could have picked the block out, I could have remade it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the translation from my lips to their ears, it went through the whole tumbling process. Every color in that thing bled. I'll take a picture. I have the before and I have the after. I'll have to show it to you. So I had to pull that. But back to the long one. Joe and I, a tour guide was there, and she was walking with us, and she had done slip the beans to him. Rounded the corner, and my first quilt ever, and I was just like a bawling baboon. So directly behind us, Baby Lock always catches my eye because that's always been my go-to.
Yeah.
So we just went around toward everything. I literally was having heart palpitations. I was so excited. I said, we got to get out of here. We got to go. This is a dream. Pinch me. So we went home. I had a county meeting the next day, and I talked to you while I was on my way to that. And I come home, picked him up, and we went back out because I just wanted to make sure it was real, you know? So we went back out and we started talking to the woman and the guy, and I got to play with the machine a little bit. And Joe looks at me and I look at him and he goes, write her up. And I was like, no, 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 no. And he goes, we'll just have to sell the other one. I said, well, I can't tell you it's going to sell real quick, you know? I don't know. Well, if you can sell it, you can have this one. So I put it all online and stuff, and it's still sitting in our dining room waiting
Oh
for its
no.
forever home. But it'll be there for a while. It's okay. And so he drove me to Bedford, and we walked in the door, and the guy goes, I knew I'd see you today. So you were right. We did outgrow it. It's a fabulous machine. I'd recommend one to anybody. So needless to say, our bedroom that was upstairs is now downstairs into that tiny cubby. And we took over the master and made it a sewing office.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, oh well, I can't have a long arm because I can't stand for long periods of time, or I'm wheelchair bound. And my thought always goes to, okay, well if you're wheelchair bound, how do you base the quilt? And this
Yeah.
is just my ignorance. Like I don't how because you can't get out of the wheelchair. How do you base the quilt if you're but maybe my thought is that you're just like maybe that's like true for or an issue for people who are paralyzed. Maybe if you're in a wheelchair you can get up and do things, but you just can't be out of the wheelchair for very long. So
Right.
maybe you can do it, but my mind goes immediately to this second category. and it would be more like what my mom is, where she can't stand for long periods of time, and maybe that's why they're in the wheelchair or whatever. You can adjust your long arm table to be the height you need it to be. And if that means it needs to be lowered so that you're sitting and
Um,
sliding your chair back and forth, you can totally do that. And when you do that, you don't have to get on the floor and baste it, or put it on the wall and baste it, or pay someone else to baste it. By the way, did you know? I didn't know this. I was listening to the American Quilt, All People Quilt podcast. That's what it is. So I was listening to it the other day, the episode they had last week. Did you know that some people can pay long armors and will pay long armors to baste their quilt for them?
no,
Yes, I had
hook
no
me
clue that was
up.
a thing, right? Like, so maybe that's how some people do it. But if you know a long armor, you've got your batting, your top, and your backing. You can ask them to baste it. And think about it: when you load a quilt onto your machine, how easy is that? All you got to do is put your basting stitches and do a few in the middle, and then you're off and running.
Yeah, exactly. I would never. I never want to get rid of my machine. I love it. And I know that's a horrible way to put it, but I haven't been on my knees in almost a month and a half, and I'm loving it because I do
Yeah,
turn around a lot of quilts.
yeah, but I mean, think about that. For somebody who might not have the budget for a long arm, and they can't stand for long periods of time, and they want that mid arm, they want to do that free motion quilting, and the basting is the part that's stopping them. Look to your local
Absolutely.
long armor, because I'm sure they will do just a quick basting job. That takes, all they got to do is load it onto the frame and do your tacking stitches around all the sides.
Absolutely.
Tucker from Tucker, we all know who Tucker is,
Yeah,
but Tucker did a live video where he showed what he does to baste a quilt. It takes no time at all, but that might be a solution where people can still enjoy the mid arm and not have to worry about standing in front of it for long periods of time.
absolutely. I'd never thought of that.
Yeah,
But
me either.
honestly, I've learned that I can load a quilt and have it ready to go in probably 20, 30 minutes max.
Do you use the red snappers?
Absolutely. At the first day of the red snappers, you were not my friends. You were telling me to get red snappers. And Tiffany, you were not my friend, I'll tell you. I was like, I thought she loved me. And my thumbs, I don't have, with the arthritis in my hands, the people were here setting it up, and I'm shoving for all I've got. I had pain. I
Yeah,
turned black and blue here from
yeah.
pushing it in. And I was like, she threw this to me, Joe. She doesn't like me.
They'll loosen up.
It
And
takes a while, but they start to get softer over time.
yeah, I did the hair dryer on a
Yeah.
couple of them that was like this until I could get it softer. And then I just sat there and bent. And the ones I use all the time now, they just snap. It's like putting a snap together.
Yep, yep, yep.
Oh my gosh. Now I'm like, yeah, she had my back. At first it was like, man, she don't like me. She hooked me in there.
Yeah, I love mine, and I do the same thing. I float all of my quilt tops just because I want to be closer to the needle.
Mhm.
So all I really got to do is load the backing on. So once I get the backing loaded, then it's just floating the batting and floating the top, and 20 30 minutes tops that it's loaded, and then you're looking at another, well, it just depends on what I'm doing. I did a video on my channel, um, where I quilted a Jelly Roll Race quilt that Katie Jolson from Greenland
Ooh.
sent over. I put that video up, and it was literally, I titled it like, "How long will it take me to quilt this quilt top?" or something like that. And I started the GoPro recording after I took like the first couple stitches, I think. And I just let the GoPro record the entire thing. But I cut out the footage anytime I advanced the quilt because nobody wanted dead air. But
Right.
I introed it. I was like, I'm gonna quilt this with an all over loop-de-loop design. Let's get started. And I didn't talk for the rest of that. So it's just literally me making loops all over the quilt, and the sound of the machine took me 13 minutes. So like, if you take the 20 or 30, let's say 30 to be even,
Under an
you take
hour.
the, yeah, under an hour, you have a quilt loaded and quilted.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Have you started doing any ruler work?
Yes. Yes.
Love it.
Yes. So here's what my trick is for things that I want to try. Number one, charity quilt to your friend, because you can mess them up and then don't go back to the person, and it's fine. It's still going to cover somebody up and it's going to be great. But rule number two is, and this helps with the waste. One of the things that I struggle with is the waste I produce to create. And I don't want to throw it away because I feel like that's wasteful when there's so many people out there that are vying for and dying for scraps, whether it's batting or fabric or whatever.
Yep.
So I try to keep bigger chunks and I pay those forward to friends. I don't, I, that's what I do. If you're a friend, you're entitled to them. But the other thing that I learned is a lot of times, especially when you're making stuff for YouTube, you're making just off blocks, right?
Yeah.
You're just making a block to demonstrate something, or you're making a mini quilt because you want to work on a project or something. And those things make excellent mug rugs and mini quilts for your wall and gifts. And you know the best way. Yep. And you toss them on the long arm off on the side or at the bottom. So if you're loading a quilt and you've got an extra 10 inches at the bottom of your quilt, or maybe 20 inches because you had a big backing, you just stack a bunch of little mug rugs up and you just quilt them.
Absolutely. I've learned that. It's like piggyback stack. And he laughs at me. He'll come in and he's like, you don't have that loaded right. And I said, Joe, I'm floating it. What? And I said, honey, it's a real term. I'm floating the top. He goes, you're going to screw that up. And that's just the way he says it. And I said, honey, I know what I'm doing right now. I've watched enough videos. He's like, but that's not what they showed you. I said, trust me, this works.
Yes. So I will say there are some things that when I do, I can float the entire thing and I don't have to base the top, the sides, the bottom, not a single thing of it. But what I have learned is as I'm starting to do more intricate quilting, basting the sides, all four of them, is your friend. So I've got a little miniature quilt, actually several of them that I made, but I have this little miniature mug rug that I've been using kind of as a mouse pad. I did it with foundation paper piecing and a Zoom workshop that I did with my members. And at the end of it, I wanted to do something with the block. So I tossed it on the long arm and I did three things on that quilt that I had never really done before. I listened to the advice that Tiffany gave me, and that was to baste all four edges so that I didn't get any of the fabric to twist or bubble under me, which I had always had a problem with at the end.
Oh, okay.
And then the second thing that I did is I tried different quilting motifs. I let the fabric tell me, or the quilt block tell me how it wanted to be quilted. And so I did intentional quilting on this thing. I used ruler work to echo my straight lines. And then in the cross area, I outlined it using ruler work to do stitch in the ditch to make that middle part puff. And then I smushed down the background with some pebbling. And that's all I did on it. And it turned out amazing. I absolutely love it. It's gorgeous. But what I learned from that is if I'm doing just like an all over loop-de-loop and the quilting is big and wide and open, I don't have to worry about basting because the fabric doesn't shift.
Right.
Well, the fabric does shift, but it doesn't really change things too much for me, and it still can be finished. But if I know that I'm going to put a lot of stitching into something, or I'm going to do some intricate work, then I need to take the time to baste. And the smaller the project is, yep.
Absolute. I haven't did like I've done like you have. I've done the feathers and I've done the loop-de-loop and the swirls, and I'm like, I'll watch Angela Walters, I'll watch Tucker, I watch Tiffany, you know what I'm saying? And I'll pause their video when they're coming up through, and then I've got the screen behind me and I'll watch what they're doing, and then I'll echo it because I play with fabric. I want to learn the technique, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But Angela Walters, she was doing a video today, and it's one of her old ones where she did this 6-week every, I think it was Monday or Wednesday, and they're only little clips. You know what I'm saying? And I tell you what, I learned a lot off that because while she was on TV, I had just a piece of paper and everything that she was doing, I was echoing it. You know what I'm saying? Because like you can have a block going like this, but you can put so many different designs in it and build all the way around, and every one of them can be different. And your quilt's gonna pop. I'd have never done that. My mind says do every block all the way around the same. You know what I'm saying? But that's
one of the things that's one of the things that I love about the free motion quilting stuff is like I shared earlier that doing the same thing over and over again starts to get me, I lose interest. But with free motion quilting, I can change it up. And every block can be completely different. And when I decide I've done enough of this, I can just transition into something else. Ultimately, Angela says this all the time, and it's a rule I totally have bought into. Ultimately, what you're doing is adding texture to your quilt. If you use the right thread with the right fabric choices, your stitches kind of just blend in or sink into the fabric. Not like sink in, you can't see the thread, but they don't contrast so much. So I tend to use fabric that loses itself a little bit I tend to use thread that loses itself a little bit in the fabric so that nobody's going to be looking at my stitching first and the quilt second. They're going to be looking at the texture that my quilting added.
absolutely.
And then if they want to, they can go look at what those stitches are. But I'm really more about just adding the texture. And there's lots of pieces of advice that she's given me. I feel like I'm an Angela Walters choir girl.
Absolutely. I remember when she was doing the midnight sews. You know what I'm saying? That's when I found her, and then she went.
Yeah, she says that people will notice a gap or difference in your distance or your density in your quilting before they'll notice that you crossed over a line you shouldn't have crossed over, or you made a mistake. And so every single time I'm quilting, I remember that. And then I remember the other rule is her rule of 3. The first time it's a mistake, the second time you repeated it, but after you make that mistake a third time, it's now a design choice, and keep moving.
I like that.
Yep.
Because if I mess up, I hate it. I get the seam ripper and I'll go under and I'll pick the seam. Yeah, and I'm just like, oh.
She said she was doing an interview today that I was listening to while I was driving. She said, yes.
I love that.
It was great. But did you hear her when she said that you can pick out the stitches if you want to, but plucking stitches never made anybody a better quilter?
Absolutely. And I've got one on now. I've made my mind up. I've only had to do the underneath once.
Yep.
And I was like, and it wasn't because I ran out. It was, I went across the line I shouldn't have, you know what I mean? And I'm like, so you're on your knees going under there with a flashlight picking it, you know what I mean? Because you want to not scrape the fabric. I was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I didn't buy this machine to do this. I will just
cross over I've done that. I have done that in quilts. And this is before today, obviously, because I haven't quilted in a few days, but I have done that on quilts. And when it has bothered me, I will just repeat that multiple times. And now it's part of my design element. I
like that idea. I really like that idea.
And then if I really don't like the way it turned out, you know what? It makes an amazing gift because somebody's going to love it.
Absolutely. But I love your idea because I hate the waste. You know what I'm saying? Like my fabric's okay because I'll trim it down and make blocks and I give them away they're already pre-cut, ready to go. They're giveaways. But the other I have a scrap box and I use it for wall hangings or trivets, whatever I need. Let me see. Do you have a special kind of quilt that you've made that makes you just as happy making it as the recipient receiving it?
Okay.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that was a mouthful. So I sent you an image of a quilt that was on my bed. And this quilt is a very special and meaningful quilt to me. And the recipient is myself. I had made the Springbrook Blossoms Block of the Month quilt along that Corey Yoder did last year in 2021. All of the patterns are available on her website. and I didn't use her fabric line. I loved her fabric line, but I didn't use her fabric line for the quilt. I decided to use the ombre fabric from V&Co by Moda, or I'm sorry, for Moda, I think is how you say it. Anyway, it was an ombre fabric by V&Co that I absolutely loved. I cut into my fat quarter bundle to do it, and I loved how it turned out. I pieced every single one of those blocks on a live stream so you can see the entire thing go together. I quilted that. That was the second quilt that I quilted on my long arm when I set it up in my new studio.
Aww.
And I bound it in my home, and I sleep with that quilt every night. No joke. That quilt is spread out on my hotel bed because I even travel with that quilt. It's my
Aww.
quilt. I love it.
And it makes you feel good when you have something you've spent years giving and making for everybody else,
Yep.
and you finally made one for yourself.
I have made lots of quilts for lots of people, and I will continue to do that. I love doing it, but this one is mine.
You sound like me. I just made the spools quilt,
Yeah.
and I have it on the long arm. When you're home, I'll shoot you a picture. That's I did mine like the scrappy instead of the matching of the spools, and
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I'm in love with it. So that one's not leaving my home.
There you go. See,
That'll
you're
be
gonna
my
have
first one after all these years, all these years. I act like I'm seasoned. I'm not seasoned. I'm still a baby. But
I actually did have one quilt that I made for myself, but there's a story there. Right when I first started quilting, I bought this beautiful panel, and gosh, if I knew what the panel was, I'd go buy another one and redo it, but I don't remember what the panel name was. And I could probably scour and find it on Etsy somewhere. But my local quilt shop had a panel that featured whales and dolphins in it, but it wasn't a realistic image because I don't like fabric that is made of photorealistic pictures of animals. I
Right.
want them to be artistic representations.
Right.
And this was kind of like a watercolor version of like some blue whales, some orcas, and some dolphins, and it was in a panel form. So I snatched that up and I cut it up and I put sashing around it. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time, but that's what I did. And then I put a great big border on it and I quilted it on my mid arm and I bound it, and I loved this quilt. It was a throw, it was only a lap quilt, but I loved it because it was whales. Well, a friend from church who has since moved to Colorado came back to town to visit. And while she was in, she saw that and she was like, "Oh my gosh, my son would love that because he loves ocean life." I was like, "Take it." And I gave it to her. So the quilt's gone, but that technically was the first quilt I made for myself. And
How awesome is
I
that?
say all of that because I'm sitting here saying that is my quilt. Like my Springbrook Blossoms, that's my quilt. But there will come a day when somebody's going to look at it and it's going to be the right person. It's not just going to be anybody that walks up and says dibs, but somebody one day is going to say, "Becca, I love that quilt." And that quilt will move on to another home and it'll have a story that'll go with it.
How cool is that? I
Yeah.
like that. That is sweet. Um, what do you do with all your finished quilts? Do you gift them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
when
have,
you're-
go ahead.
the other, we're so much alike. It's funny. When you're doing your projects on your YouTube channel, say it's I don't want to, like, say you're doing a sew along.
Sure.
Do you do them from start to finish and execute to the end? Because I know years past, like years, in 2020 when I started with COVID, I jumped in with all feet. To anybody that was sewing, I'd buy that fabric line. I would do whatever. And along the way, I got lost in a few because
Yeah.
they got busy and moved on to other things or whatever. And I
Yep.
like it that you and a couple other content creators, you start it, we finish it. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? But one of the questions that was sent in was, I'd follow her, but does she start to finish?
Yep. So I can't start to finish things on a live stream, and that's not going to happen. Like I try to keep my Friday night live streams to 2 hours, and sometimes the projects can be wrapped in 2 hours, and sometimes they can't. So what I do is make a decision after that live stream ends as to whether I'm going to finish the project on the air or off the air. I also have signed up for more than I can take on, and I have underestimated the amount of time that a lot of projects can take, and I just start saying, yes, I'm going to do this, yes, I'm going to do this. So what I have done in 2022 is really taken a harder look at what do I realistically have bandwidth for, what can I really deliver, and instead of spreading myself so thin and missing the mark on all the things, I'm lasering in on and focusing in on those things that I know I can do and I can do well. So 2022, I would tell you 2022 version of Becca and future version, yes, I finish. I might not be able to always finish the project in a video, but I will always do my best to give you enough information to get started. You may have some homework, but then I will show you the project when it's done. I'll do everything I can to do all of that. And sometimes, honestly, the project and the items maybe the story there is that another creator picks it up and carries it forward if that's the case.
Right.
I will tell you, past Becca has had instances where I have started things and not finished them. So I'm thinking back to when the pandemic hit, I decided I wanted to do a Sew Becca sampler. I had no idea what to call it, so I just put my name on it.
Oh,
and I picked out 12 blocks in a pattern book that I was going to make, and I did a tutorial video for each one of those.
See, I must have missed that.
Yep. Well, nobody, I mean, it's a really old video
I'm gonna
series.
go dig it.
Views. The blocks are gorgeous. I love them. To this day, I still never sewed the blocks together, and I kept telling people I would put a video out there of me putting them in with sashing, and I just never did. So I feel really bad about that, but I've also given myself a little bit of grace, and I've moved on. So what I'm doing now is really just making sure that I am not taking on another sew-along commitment until I know I can actually have bandwidth to deliver it. So you'll if you've been around my channel, you'll notice that the past month or so, every Sunday, I was uploading another video for the Bright Side Quilt Along.
Yes.
That was a Block of the Month series that I started last year, but I had to put it on pause when we moved. And so I was committed, laser focused to get that wrapped up. And so I hustled my little booty to make sure I was making the block and recording a tutorial for it and having that video upload every single Sunday. So that entire quilt along, start to finish, including putting all the blocks together, there's a video for every single one of them.
How cool
and that, yep, that is what I am doing now, right? So the next series that I'm doing is the Bliss Quilt Along, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. The Puzzle Mystery Quilts that Cotton Cuts does, I do the same thing, but the difference with the Puzzle Mystery Quilts is I will always do those on a live stream. So you will see the entire clue come together in real time. You'll get your die cut pieces and we'll sew it together every single time, including putting all of the clues together at the very end.
I've never saw one finished. I've always saw you doing the clues, but I've never fought. I fall short because I'm like, okay, and I'll watch yours. Then I think it's Ian.
Yeah.
He does his little. I just love that guy with all my heart. He is just a doll baby. And I love to watch you guys. But then I get sidetracked on other things. I never circle back to say, okay, how did this turn out?
Sure.
You know? And you have my interest peaked to give that a shot when they kick off their next. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the Puzzle Mystery Quilt, I have not done a great job being a cotton cut. I won't say I've not been a great ambassador, but I feel like I could do a couple more things to be a better cotton cuts ambassador. And one of those is walking you through the completion of your Puzzle Mystery Quilt. If I'm being completely honest, I have 4 Puzzle Mystery Quilts that I did all the clues for, but I never sewed the clues into their final quilt top. So this week that I'm at retreat, my goal is to work on those Puzzle Mystery Quilts and get the quilts done. But my goal also, starting with the So Sweet Puzzle Mystery Quilt, which is what I'm actively doing now, and I will be doing the Piazza Puzzle Mystery Quilt, which will ship at the end of July, and there's still colorways available, Donna.
Is there? You have to send me the link on what I'm doing. I would do it.
Yeah, not a problem. I'll send you all the information when we get off the call. But those, starting with those, I'm going to do the clues all along the way, but then I'm going to have a long live stream at the very end where we put all of the clues together into a quilt top, because that's the piece that I've missed in the past few puzzle mystery quilts, and I don't think it's fair. I want to help you finish your quilt. I want to
Right.
inspire you to do it, so I'm going to give you a place to do it.
I love it. I would jump in because I've just never, honestly, it's not you and it's not anybody else. I've never saw one of theirs.
They're gorgeous.
I don't know what they look like. I love the blocks. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think they're beautiful, but I'm like, I sit back and I'm like, okay, I saw
How's that gonna
month
go
1 and
together?
I saw month 4, but I never saw one where it says all 12, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm anxious to see that, but that's just me. It's my neglect of not following through watching. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. One thing that you can, when you do go to their website, if you want to see what past puzzle mystery quilts have looked like, you go to cottoncuts.com/get-started. That's always the landing page for the puzzle mystery quilts. And there's a link there that says past PMQs. And when you click on it, it'll show you what all of the reveals from past puzzle mystery quilts look like. So if you're ever like, yeah, well, I see people talking about this all the time, but what do they look like? Is this just basically a churn dash quilt? That's it. Go take a look. You can decide for yourself whether or not you like the designs that Sheila Christensen has come up with.
From what I seen this last time, where I'm getting little tidbits, I love the colorways.
Yeah.
They're so beautiful, and I'm like, right there is the hook for me. Now
yeah.
it's the real end for the next one, because I need to get into that.
Yeah.
Let me see. There was a couple more I wanted to ask you, and then I don't want to keep you too long, and I'm sorry I'm running late with you.
Oh, you're totally fine. This is fun.
What kind of strategies and mindsets did you have to bring forth? I'm switching over to the YouTube land.
Okay.
That made you decide to be a content creator?
Okay. That's an interesting question, and I'm not really sure exactly how to answer it. I feel like when I started versus where I am now, there had to be a transition from just, when I started, it was I just want to make videos and I just want to put them out there. But where I am now is I want this to be a business. I want this to be, this is a thing, right? Like this is a real
like
thing.
your own brand.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, what I've had to realize is, gosh, I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but I don't know how else to say it. But what I'm selling is me.
Right.
That's the product. And it's me. And I have struggled a lot with that because I'm just me, and I don't understand why somebody would want to watch me. Like I don't get it. So when I see people watching me on Friday night, or just coming back and watching me open a box, or sewing along with me, or sending me emails, or leaving me comments, I'm just like, this is all great. You guys make me feel so loved, and I literally have no idea why you love me.
Right. But it's kind of like the double-edged sword, because I'm at the newbie stage, like what you were years ago, you know? And I think that as you sit back as a seasoned YouTuber now and you're looking back, you sit and you watch certain channels.
Yeah.
And the mindset I would tell you is, why do you watch them?
Oh, yeah, that's true. See, that's the thing. Like, I have my channels, and not even just quilting related, right? I have my channels that I watch because I love the people, right?
Absolutely.
And now I love the story. I love the way they're able to tell a story. I love the way they're able to captivate me and keep me energized or keep me engaged. And there might be times where I miss them, but sometimes, like, one channel that I love to watch, Eamon and Beck. They're this younger couple that live in Canada. They're just, their whole story is amazing. I love them. But they normally upload on Sundays. In the past few months, Beck has been going through this battle with breast cancer. And so they've understandably not been uploading every Sunday. But in the beginning, when they've had to take that pause, I feel like I'm missing coffee with my friend. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I feel like I'm missing that. So I I I say all of that, like I don't know why people watch me, and I mean that lightheartedly. I
Oh, no, no,
know,
no. I know you
yeah,
know why, but
I know why, and I get it. I think I don't know how to articulate it, but
right.
I feel so blessed that people want to watch me because I love making the content. So the best that I can hope for is that I'm doing the most with the time that I have while I'm relevant, and I hope it never goes away. Like I
You're
just
doing
enjoy
great.
my
It's
time
kind of like, yeah, years ago we had, well, we don't have cable. You know what I'm saying? But we
with
used to. And you have your favorite TV shows. It's kind of like YouTube to me and Joe. It's kind of like that. We have our
yeah,
favorite channels, you
yeah,
know? And instead of us watching like Gunsmoke or whatever, you know what I'm saying? We tune in to Sew Becca or Tiffany or Tucker, you know? My husband's
yeah.
learning so much about quilting. It amazes me. He
Yeah.
doesn't have a choice. It's on the TV 24/7.
Yep, yep, yep.
Now he's
I
learning
think
what HSTs are and adding and binding and flipping and
I think the biggest thing that I've had to learn, because I think the best way to just kind of close that out is just learning. I have learned over the past couple of years that the brand, the what Sew Becca offers is me, and that's what people want. That's what people are looking
absolutely.
for. I can put a video out there on how to make a half square triangle block, but the reality is, Donna, and you know this, everybody has done a tutorial on how to make a half square
Absolutely.
triangle block. And there's only so many things that you can do with half square triangles.
Yep.
And there's only so many free motion quilting doodles that you can do.
Yep.
At the end of the day, what's going to set me apart from somebody else and
It's your
have
brand.
yep, it's just me. It's just my personality, and that's all I've got to offer. Honestly, I would not be surprised. I feel like this all the time. I feel like everybody that watches me knows more about quilting than I do, and they're teaching me.
Every time the last couple months you've been on, I've been like, I'll come into your chat because I'm there every week. I'm working the bingo hall in our kitchen for the fire department. But as soon as my phone pings that you're live, I sign in. Hi, everybody, blah, blah, blah. My phone goes down. It's up on high, and I got my earbuds in. And
Oh,
that's my normal Friday night. You know what I mean? If I'm
oh,
walking around selling tips, I've got you in my back pocket, but I'm listening.
oh, that's
Because
awesome.
it's just my way of, that's my TV show, and I don't want to miss it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's what I did when you interviewed Tracy with the sewing channel. I was working on wrapping up a couple of things and getting packed for retreat. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to listen. I don't need to be super active in the chat. So I just tune in and I listen. And I'll tell you a secret. This is an exclusive for your channel. I
Okay.
do that on a lot of lives. I
They're
will tune,
lurking.
yeah, yes, I will lurk because I like the audio in the background. So if I'm in my sewing room, I don't have a TV in there. I'll listen to music. I like listening to music. I like listening to uh, documentaries and biographies and things too. But I also really like listening to content creators during their live stream. And it's not that I don't want to interact with people, but sometimes I just want to create. And
Absolutely.
that's my time to be like, okay, I don't have to touch the keyboard and I don't have to touch the mouse. So I'm just going to sign in. I'm going to listen to them talking and I'm going to go create. And if they start talking about something that's going on in the chat or whatever, maybe I'll look up or occasionally I'll glance at the chat, but 99% of the time, I'm just listening.
Absolutely. And I do that a lot of times because I used to think, okay, I'm watching, I better do this. And then I'm trying to stitch in and I'm doing this.
Yep.
And I'm not being mean. I love to listen and learn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've talked to Teresa Louise. Not, I get mesmerized by her and Tiffany.
Oh,
I really do.
yeah.
Because she can walk you through a project blindfolded, either one of them. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even have to have the TV on, just the volume. And you can visualize because they
Yep.
do it so good. You know what I mean? And to me, that's what it's all about. They've
Yep.
got a skill. Now, I love the hands on because your hands are here showing me how to do something. And I'm like, if I don't understand right then, I'm pausing. I'll look at what time it is, and I'll jot it down so I know right where I got to go back to.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Always mark the timestamp too, right? Like
Yep.
I have been doing for my edited videos, like the Bright Side Quilt Along and the Bliss that's coming up. Oh, and by the way, little plug for my channel, coming up in September, I will be doing the Boo Crew Mystery Quilt Along from Fat Quarter Shop. That is a free pattern that is going on right now, but my sew along version of that will be in September, so you can sew that from your stash. And in October, there's going to be a
If I don't,
cancer.
it's Boo-hoo.
The Boo Crew Mystery Quilt Along. You can go look at the pattern right now. I will be doing edited, pre-recorded videos that will come out weekly in the month of September, so that you'll have that done before Halloween.
And you said that's Fat Quarter Shop?
It is Fat Quarter Shop. It's a free pattern. And then in October, more details to come, but I will be doing the breast cancer awareness sew along.
I'm all
too.
in. You just tell me, shoot me the information.
Details all coming. Details all coming.
As a breast cancer survivor, I'm all in.
Yep. That I don't have all of the details on when that will happen, but both of those are up and coming. And the reason why I bring that up, just the edited videos, the edited tutorials that I'm doing for sew alongs, I've started trying to lean into this functionality that YouTube has to give you chapter marks. So if you ever are on one of my pre-recorded videos, if you look in the description box, you'll see each step has a timestamp. And so you can click on that timestamp to go directly to that step. So if you're trying to put your block together and you're stuck on step 3 and you want to see what I did on step 3, just expand the description box and go click on step 3.
Wow. Did you get that, Joe?
Oh, I know.
He has already knew that. I was like, well, I didn't. But everybody in the world, everybody in YouTube land knows I don't do electronics. He doesn't allow it. I touch it and it breaks. So we have the golden rule. I don't touch it. You don't have to fix it.
See, he just does the videos for you. You just make the quilts. You got the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. We're a team.
There you go.
That's what we got into this. I wasn't going down this road alone. He was the one shoving this train.
There you go.
I know you can do it. So anyway, I'm going to end there. You told me about the beautiful quilt. I can't wait to be able to pop that in here and showcase it. I love that quilt too.
Yep.
So with all that being said, it's getting a bit late and I don't want to tie you up much longer while you're out taking mom cross country. And you will promise to bring her back, I'm sure.
Wait a minute.
That was good. We want you to come back.
She might get left in Alabama. I'm just saying.
No, Mama Nancy.
Come get me, Donna. She's leaving.
All you got to do is hit the speed dial, Mama.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in tonight, everybody. It's been a blast. Becca, thank you, Mama Nancy, for hopping in with me on your trip around the world. I appreciate it, and you've been amazing. Enjoy your time with your mom. God knows we only have them for so long. They're with us on loan. So cherish those memories, whether they pluck our nerves or we pluck theirs. Cherish the memories. They're on loan.
Great.
God bless you guys. See you back again in the next live. Safe travels, darling. Bye-bye.